Mr.
You know, meat and a charcuterie where they sold horse meat, that's separate. And they had a grocery store, and they call that épicerie in French. And they had a paronnier, hardware, and they had their drugs, and they had a doctor, and they had an église, a church. They had a regular little city, you know, and a community hall, what they call maison communal. And then outside of that, a kilometer or two, there'd be another little town, you see, but they wouldn't have those things in it. They'd have probably 3 families, and all around them, they would have land that they worked around. They each knew where the land was, you see what I mean? They didn't have anything to work it but themselves. They didn't have horses nor anything. The Germans just took everything away from them, you see? And I was a place, from Ohain there, I went to a place called Chaubrier. It was just a little ways up. And I'll tell you why. I was at Ohain, and it was cold weather, and our billet that we was living in was cold. And I went and took my blankets, and I went out and slept in the horse barn where the horses were. It was warmer. And one little boy come down one day, and he said his mother would come and look after me if I'd go up there, and I wouldn't go, you see. He sent his big brother down. So Floribert, he come down, and I went up to have a look. And it looked pretty good to me. I went up to look first before I'd make any move or go. And I went up, and there was Anna. There's 3 girls there. The 3 girls, Anna, oh, what the deck, I know them so well as I know me own. And the old man and 2 women and 3 girls. They were pretty well grown up, and 2 little boys. And the old man wasn't married to either of the women. He had kids from both of them. There were 6 kids, and from the 2 women. And he wasn't married to either of them, and they had lived in that house since 1605, the family. It was marked right on there, 160 in iron. They'd lived in there, and they had a cow, they had cochon, they had pigs, they had chickens, they had ducks, they had turkeys. And the women done the work, and the old man, all he did was look after the cow, and that was a very good idea. The women done all the work. They done the digging of the ground, and they planted, and they sowed it, and they done the work. It's a good place. You see? They got along fine, no trouble at all.
Did you stay up there?
Huh? I stayed there until the time I wanted to move back to Canada, you know. And then there was 25 of us in the whole battalion wanted to move. And I moved from there back to a place called Boisfort, because the 102nd Battalion was being discharged at Toronto. And we joined the 102nd at Boisfort, you see. And at Boisfort, we built it, you know, the same as anywhere else. And I was built it with a man that had a charbonnage, a coal yard. And he was an old man. He was around 80 or more. And he had a coal yard. And he had 2 daughters. He had one daughter looked after the house. And his wife, or the mother to the 2 daughters, was mental upstairs. They never sent their old people to the nursing homes, you see. Not the only one, but I never seen any of them. They sent them out. They looked after their own old people. And Marie, she looked after the mother and looked after the father and looked. And then Annetta was the little one. All she did, delivered the coal for her father. And how do you think she delivered the coal?
Just carry on.
All right?
Sure.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
She delivered in a wheelbarrow. Now, I tell you, the wheelbarrows are made different than they are here. And 50 kilo was 50 kilos. That's practically the same as about 100 pounds, a little bit better than 100 pounds. And she would put 5 sacks of coal on that wheelbarrow. And I'll tell you how the wheelbarrow is built. There was a wheel in the middle, you see, good-sized wheel, and In the front there, it was built up, and you could put a sack of coal there, and a sack of coal on that side. You see what I mean? And behind here, there was a place you could put 3 sacks of coal. Get the idea? And then there was a little rope you put around there, and up over her shoulder there. And she had legs that were like toothpicks, and that little mutt would take 5 sacks of coal and deliver it. How she did it, I didn't know. But you see, 2 of those sacks tried to bounce the other. You see what I mean? No. You'd hardly believe that a woman would take 5 sacks of coal and on a wheelbarrow and coal. And that's what he had. He had a coal yard there, and I stayed at his place. And I used to go out. I didn't like to see the old poor old fellow shoveling coal out there. I took the apron, took my kilt off and put the apron around, went out and shoveled a lot of coal for him, and sacked it for him and piled it up for the old boy. And he talked Flemish. You see, there's patois, wallon, flamand, and French, Francais. There's 4 languages there. Well, he could only talk flamand. But he asked the girls to ask me if I'd come back and he'd start the coal business good and buy a truck. I wouldn't go back there for anything, you know what I mean? I stayed there until I moved back, was it 72nd, the 102nd, back to England.
Granddad, you told me once about a house you took the horses in through the front room.
Oh, that was when I was driving the kitchen team. Just the kitchen. Yes, I drove through the kitchen that time.
Can you tell us whose house it was?
I don't know. Oh, yeah, I know whose house it was. The names were Garrott. But that, I'll have to start someplace else when they get that far, down to that house. Because before that, I was driving the kitchen long before that. But anyway, as you say, we moved up to Grand Lee was the name of the place. It was quite a little town, Grand Lee, and I always had to look after my horses, you know what I mean? And the water cart had to go with the kitchen, because you couldn't have a kitchen without a water cart, could you? And there's another fellow, he looked after the water. And I'd try and find places for our horses. The horse lines were never anywhere around where we were. They were way off someplace, and we'd find a place, a neck or a barn for our horses if we could. I did, always. And at Grand Lee, I knocked at a door and asked the lady if she had a barn. And I said, Madame, what is that for my cheval? And she said, no, but so-and-so had. So I went and asked them, and she said, oui, go and get your horse. Oh, you see, where's Sachet le Cheval? Come and go and get him. And I went and got my horses, and she opened the door, and I went right through the kitchen. And the back doors was open, the big doors, and they went right in, and the whole yard was a brick wall all the way around the blooming yard. Clean around, and the only way to get in and out that yard was through the kitchen. I don't care who was there. And the people themselves had a little cart there, not a cart, it had a top on it and everything. They'd had a horse at one time, and they had to go through the kitchen just the same. It's a nice little yard in the back, a brick wall all the way around, nice barn, but they went through the kitchen. No other way to get in and out, except jump over the wall, and you couldn't do that. That was high.
What did you see in the morning when you get up all the time?
I didn't stay in the kitchen there. I didn't.
When you come down.
I ain't worried about getting out over there, but, you know, just imagine taking your horse right through the kitchen.
How were they? The people there friendly to the Canadians?
Oh, yes, they were friendly as can be, very nice people. Their names were Malott.
Or like the people in general in France, were they?
Oh, yes, they were good. The Belgians, I like the Belgians better. I'll tell you what happened in France, if you'd like to know. You know, you take a bunch of young soldiers, young folks from 17 up to 22, 24, 25, they're full of devilment, ain't they? Well, a lot of them in France, when we was in France, they'd have apple orchard, or they'd have something, and the young fellas would do devilment on the French. And the French wasn't so pretty pleased with us as that, because they were too far from the war zone, you see. But up in Belgium there, they were right into the war zone, you see. It was a different proposition. I liked it. I liked any of them. They got along fine with them. But you had to talk to them, otherwise you couldn't understand anything. People, you got to talk to people if you know anything about them. They want to know about you. I had a lot of little pictures. Now, you had my pictures, you showed them, and they'd talk to you and ask you questions, and they'd tell you. And they'd explique you. They call it explique you. They'd explain to you. If you said wrong, now I'll tell you, ecury is a barn. Curie is a priest. Well, I'd call a barn a priest, or a priest a barn sometimes, you know. Curie is a priest, and ecury is a barn. You see, there's...
What's a doctor? Is that a doctor?
Doctor.
I thought a cure is a doctor.
Doctor is that, but a priest is and a barn sounds very much alike. But there's quite a difference between the barn and the priest.
You used to tell me stories about the girls over in France.
Girls? Was there girls over there? Oh, they were same as they are here.
Even the redhead?
Oh, boys.
The young kids are gone now, Granddad.
Oh, I don't think they'd believe me if I tell them about the redhead.
Tell him anyway.
I'll tell you anyway. You can believe me or you don't, just as you like. I was in Brussels at the time. You know, at Beaufort was right close to Brussels. You could get on a tram, and in 10 minutes you'd be in Brussels, right from Beaufort. Well, all transportation was free to soldiers. Don't matter where you went. Whether it's on the tram or whether it's on the big trains, it was all free, or buses, or in theaters, or anything, it was free to soldiers. We didn't pay. The only thing we had to pay for was our eats. Well, anyway, there was all kinds of girls there, like there is every other place. And there was one of our boys went in there and he picked up a girl in town. It wasn't me, this one. And he was a nice-looking fellow, and he picked up a dame, and she took him home to her house where she was. And when he went in there, he was surprised. That fellow that was in there had a uniform on. He thought that she was bringing him into jail, but it wasn't. All her servants had uniforms. And at that time, she had a big car and a chauffeur at the wartime. Now, I'll tell you, you had to have money to have that now, I'm telling you, at that time. And that fellow was with her. And he had to go back to the battalion every so often to find if there's any news, anything changed, you see what I mean, every other day or so. And she would drive him back with the chauffeur to the battalion and find out whether there was any change. And she had, at Beaufort, there were big racetracks at Beaufort, and she had horses and men to look after them, that same woman. So he fell right into it, right up to his neck, didn't he? That fellow. Now, that's a true story, too. I often wondered what he did, whether he, you know, went back to it, or whether when he got the discharge he didn't. But that's it.
You think a lot of the soldiers stayed over in France?
They might have, I don't know. They could have.
How'd you meet your redhead?
Huh?
Your redhead?
Oh, I don't want you to talk about the redhead.
Oh, come on, sure.
If I'd tell you about that, you said a damn liar.
No.
I'm sure you would.
Well, let's hear it and we'll judge for ourselves.
You'd say I'm a liar if I tell you about redhead. Well, I'll tell you just for fun, if you can stand it. Anybody had a bad stomach? I hope not. Well, I picked up a day in Brussels, too. There's lots of them in Brussels, but I like Brussels, but I'll tell you why. They had piles of nice things to look at, you know. You'd go into places with pictures and all kinds of things. Brussels was a lovely place to go. Well, anyway, I picked up this redhead, and, well, she wasn't redhead. She was just had a hat on, and it was a round hat like this, you know, and it was about so high. I didn't see any hair, So I says to her, I says, well, Element Kubivachevi, the German cut your hair. You see what happened over there when the Germans held Brussels, you know, at one time. And if a girl dosed a German up, they'd catch her and they'd cut all her hair off. You know what I mean? That was, you know what I mean? So I says, there's Element Kubivachevi, cut her hair. She says, promise you. Come and go for a glass of coffee and I'll show you. So anyway, she went into a restaurant and took a pin or two out and she lifted her hat off like that. And here was her blasted hair, red as fire, all rolled up and fixed so that it stayed there. She could take her hat off and put it on top of her head.
Is that the only place she had red hair?
And she could put her hat on and off, you know, without disturbing her hair. Now that's fine. Well, she took me home to her father and mother's place. Well, that was all right. Went to bed with her, and heavens alive, that isn't the only place she had hair. You know that girl was the thickest hair as a dog, and it wasn't just on her head. Her num-nums, and her belly, and her legs, and her back was just as covered with hair as you could possibly get it. You could take both hands in her hair like that and you get a handful. Now, they're red hair. Now, her folks weren't that way. She was a freak. She could have made a fortune if she'd been in the right place. She was red hair all over her, right down to her blasted ankles. Red hair. Thick red hair. Now, that's something I'd like to have had a picture of her. I know that girl could have made a fortune if she'd been in the right place. She was a freak with hair. Because hair is a thing that don't grow on people's bodies, but it grew on her. Arms, breasts, belly, legs, whole thing full of black, red hair. Back.
What was she like to talk to in that? Was she...
Well, she talked the same as anybody else.
Yeah.
She was no different than anyone else, only she was all hair, that's all. Biggest part of her was hair. I don't know, it looked like she had it all off, but anyway, she was hair.
Kept you warm at night, didn't he?
Huh?
Kept you warm at night.
Oh, it'd make your stomach roll putting there to look at, get a hand in the hair like that. Yes, isn't natural, is it? Huh? Oh, boy. But her folks weren't that way. No.
Was she an only child?
Huh?
Was she an only...
No, she had brothers and sisters.
And
They were nice people, huh?
the only one that was like that?
That's the only one that had hair. Like that.
Strange.
And the rest were not red exactly, but they were blonde. But she was dark red. And she was all over. She had hair for the whole family and then some. I'll tell you. I tell you that... But there was 5 women to every man over there. Because the men had been killed off or died off or old, you know. The women done the work. The women done the work. That was the place to be. We didn't have to work. Well, at Wofford, there the old man was with the 3 women. No, there's Marie, Augusta, and Anna. That was the 3 women.
Yeah.
I thought I knew them in a minute. There's Marie, Augusta, and Anna, and 2 men, 1 man and 2 women. And as I say, he just took the cow out to pasture. The women done all the rest of the work. And in the same little corner where he was, there was another family there. Robert was their names. We'd call them Roberts, I guess, but they were called Roberts. And there was old Mr. and Mrs. Robert, and then there was a daughter, Marie, and then there was a boy, Felix. And Felix had a grocery store, an epicery, they called it, down in O'Hain. And Marie looked after her mother and her father and done the farming. And they had land all around. And looked after the old folks. They didn't send old folks to homes. The family looked after them. I never seen any place where they could send them to old homes. The family looked after their old people. You see? Well, that's a good idea.
Who was in charge of your war effort? Who was the general or whatever?
Well, I don't know who was in charge, but I'll tell you who killed a lot of us off is Curry.
That was from the German side.
No, Sir Arthur Curry.
He was
a big shot, and he put us up into Passchendaele where there's hundreds killed, and they didn't want a pinch of snuff. He took the Passchendaele Ridge. There's piles of fellows killed up there. They never done anything with it. The other side of Ypres. That was a heck of a place, Passchendaele. I was through that too. I didn't get killed, but by God, I don't know how the hell I didn't get killed. There's only a few of us come out.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, how many were killed out of how many?
Oh, I don't know, but of our bunch, there's only less than 100 come out, and there's about 400 went in.
Did you ever go down to Malta?
Huh?
Did you ever go to Malta?
No,
Never got.
it was all in France and Belgium. Never any
Did you
farther.
have planes come over?
Huh?
Did you have planes shooting?
Yes, there's planes come over.
What about the Hindenburg Line?
Hindenburg Line. Well, that's another question. The Hindenburg Line. You never seen it advertised how it was made, did you? Huh? You've heard about it, haven't you? You've heard about the Hindenburg Line, but you never had description of how it was put together, did you? No. Well, I'd never known either if I hadn't went through it, so I know. Our outfit would never have got through the Hindenburg Line if they'd been our tanks alone. They couldn't have never got through. They had to be blown through with artillery before they could get a way through it. Well, there's two roads where we were. I don't know how in the other places, but there was two roads. One went that way and one, you know what I mean, one went up and the other come down, empty. But I'll tell you what it was like. I'll tell you what the Hindenburg Line was like. There was no man's. There was what they call no man's land, isn't there? So no man's land was quite a piece. And the people used to live in no man's land, all kinds of little villages and houses and farms and everything. And when the war was on, some of them went with our side and some went with the Germans held. You see what I mean? They split. And the towns right next to there was covered with those refugees as well as their own people. And when we went through no man's land. It took quite a while to go over no man's land. Now, I'll tell you, there's good roads, but nevertheless, it was quite a ways. And the time we left where we were, but over no man's land and through the Hindenburg Line, it's where our kitchen was put. We couldn't put the kitchen where we wanted it. We had men that went ahead of us that found out where those things went, most convenient to the army. You see what I mean? Well, we went up through. I could see how it was put up. There was little posts about that high, every about 15 feet apart, as far as you could see, you know what I mean? And back behind every other, there's other little posts, you see, just the same. And the farther back you got, the higher the little post got, you know what I mean? Till the little post got about 12 or 14 feet high. And that was interlaced with barbed wire in every direction. You could have walked on top of it if your feet didn't stick there, with barbed wire. Now, if our tanks had got into that, it would wound them right straight up. You see what I mean? And on the other side of that, there was guns and things that would, you know, paste us guys. So that's why they said they couldn't get through the Hindenburg Line. And they would had to be blown through with artillery, for we'd never get through it. See what I mean? And you could see it on both sides, you see? As far as you could see.
How long was it, you know?
It was supposed to be 590 miles long, but dear knows how many places has been broken open, I don't know. But we didn't see that. All we seen was what was in front of us. You see what I mean? And you never seen a description of it yourself, anywhere on record, but you could see it, what it was like. And we went past there, quite a ways past, before the man that went ahead of us, where they wanted the kitchen, you know what I mean? We had to go where we was told. There's fellows to guide us. And we put the kitchen there. And before I could get you see, I had 2 wheels and a box and a seat and everything, big wheels, and the kitchen itself was hooked on. There's an oval like that, and the kitchen is snapped onto that, and the kitchen comes behind, a little short tongue in the kitchen. Well, you see, you have to take that off, you see, the kitchen, and level the kitchen up. See, the little things on the side, you can level it, to make it level. And the man that looks after the kitchen, they got to look after it too, you know. Then they take this my front away, you see what I mean? And then the water carts have got to come and have water for them, hasn't it? They can't have a kitchen without water. And there's one man looks after the water, and a government man to test the water. There's no water goes into that tank but what is tested. And it is locked down so that no one can slip a package of poison in that tank. You know what I mean? Sometimes they could come along and put a poison, you know what I mean, and kill a lot of people. But that's sealed so that no one can touch it. But the man of the government that tests the water that goes into the tank. You see what I mean? And when it goes, there's an indicator on it, how much water is in it, and he'd have to watch it, and when it gets so far down, the fellow would come, and Bobby Clark would get his horses on there, and they'd go and get water. See? And when we pulled in, the people called around that kitchen of ours, hundreds of them. Germans had left them for several days, children and all, nobody, without any food. And they were in bad shape for food. And our kitchen worked for 24 hours a day for several days to feed the population there. You see what I mean? Well, we were supposed to eat at the kitchen. Well, we couldn't eat at the kitchen. How could you go and get your rations and eat it with a bunch of kids looking at you or anybody else? We couldn't eat at the kitchen. It's impossible. You know what I mean? But we used to go to the horse lines to get our oats anyway, and our kitchen was supposed to be at the horse lines. It was. We used to have to go down there and eat down there. And then we'd bring oats back to our horses, you see, and oat bags. And I never seen screwed hay before, but they had screwed hay there. We bale hay, don't we, here? Well, there was a place there, not far from where the kitchen was. I always looked for a place to put my horses. And I seen a place before I got there, back a ways, that was kind of, looked like a barn, so I went back, left my horses there, and went back and looked. And before there was a shed, and there was hay. It was about that big around. It was all tied up. It had been twisted, and it was twisted. You know, you take a string and hold it at one end and you twist it, it gets shorter and thicker. Well, the hay was done that to it. And that was, and then you see, if you cut it off and undone it, there was quite a nice bunch of hay. You see? And beside of that, there was room for our horses, lots of room for our horses, and we didn't need to carry hay up. There was all kinds of hay there, and we had to carry or oats up, that's all. We used to go down and get our oats and eat down there. But I never seen twisted hay before. I'd never seen the machine that twisted it either. But it was twisted, it was about that big around, and there was several tons of it, all piled up there. You pulled it.
Easier to store it that way, wouldn't it?
Huh?
You'd be able to store a lot more.
Oh, yeah, store it up. We baled it. That was twisted hay.
Yeah.
But as I say, you cut it off there, and cut about 4 foot of it or 3 foot of it off, and untwist it like that, and you got a big, nice pile of hay. Good hay. The horses liked it, too.
You've seen an awful lot, Gramps.
Huh?
You've seen an awful lot. When you were a little boy, there weren't planes or cars. Now we've been to the moon and everything. What's been the biggest change that you've seen?
Well, heavens to Betsy, man, there's a big change. When I was a little kid, I didn't see only one car until, I was about 10, 11 years old before I first seen a car.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an old, looks like a buggy with wooden wheels and a little strip of leather around them and a little motor in the back, and the front they sit on it, this thing across that way to steer it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And from then on to now, you can see what the difference is. Why, even people flying now.
Yeah.
Supposing some of these old birds, like my grandfather, come alive now and looked at it here, he'd think he was in the wrong country. He wouldn't know where the devil he was.
You know how long it took me to come from here, from Vancouver, all the way to Amsterdam?
I don't know.
Less than 8 hours.
Not very long.
Took
But-
you 13 days to go from the east.
Well, you see there, you see the big change in our lifetime. Terrible change.
What can you remember about the first time you heard about a plane?
What?
What about the first time you heard about planes, airplanes?
I don't remember. Because we had, when we was in the war, we had balloons. You know what balloons were?
Dirigibles, yeah.
Dirigibles. And they was put out on trucks. There were big trucks that held them down. And they could move them places all around on a truck. See, the truck was anchored them down on the truck. And they could take the truck and they could pull it different places. And one time I seen a German come over. I didn't see the German come over, but I seen what happened. The little plane come over and he fired some shots into one plane, or one of those dirigibles, and set the fire, and he went to another one, and he put 3 down before he knew what he was doing. And the fellas, as soon as they started there, they had to get out of the basket, you know, and get down because, you know what I mean?
Go up so quick.
Yeah, jump out of the basket.
Can you tell us any stories about our dad when he was a boy?
No, I don't know anything about your dad, and more than he was just like any other kid, you know.
Yeah?
I don't know anything about your dad.
No?
I don't know. Bill always a worker. He was always willing to work. I know that. He didn't have trouble getting... None of my kids was lazy. We weren't a lazy bunch, any of them. Vern was the nearest one. He would kind of lay on the scoop shovel handle a bit sometimes, but not very much. But well, kids are all good workers.
Okay. I got a favorite story I'd like you to tell my son.
Well, what is it?
Do you know about that guy named Jack?
What?
Built a house?
Who?
A fellow named Jack that built a house?
Jack built.
Yeah.
House that Jack built.
Did he want? Yeah, who's that?
That's a poem.
That's a poem.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
I don't know. Do you know it?
No.
Go on, Wesley. You do know it.
You know it. Tell him.
I don't want to tell them, fellas.
Sure.
Sure,
Well, everybody
know
wants
it.
to know.
Come on.
Well, do you want me to start at the bottom and go up, or do you want us at the top and go down?
Well,
Both ways.
both
yeah.
ways.
I can't. It's no good of going both ways because it's too long. You see, the way it starts is this house that Jack built, you see?
Yeah.
And this is the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the sack that held the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the string that tied the sack that held the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the rat that chawed the string that tied the sack that held the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the cat that killed the rat that chawed the string that tied the sack that held the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the dog that chased the cat that killed the rat that chawed the string that tied the sack that held the malt and goes up to the top. Well, I'll tell you, I started at the top and go down. That's damn sight easier. This is the pony, the pig and the pigeons that belonged to the farmer that sowed the corn, that kept the cock that crowed in the morn, that waked the priest all shaven and shorn, that married the man all tattered and torn, that kissed the maiden all forlorn, that milked the cow with a crumpled horn, that tossed the dog, that worried the cat, that killed the rat, that chawed the string, that tied the sack, that held the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. Now, the other way, you go from the top to the bottom to the top, and it takes a heck of a while. You see what I mean?
What's your self-analysis program?
Huh?
Your self-analysis.
Oh, I'll tell you one. But this is a true.
Self-analysis.
This is a true one. A hard, cruel man was Solomon Ray. Nothing of value he gave away. He hoarded and saved, and he pinched and he shaved. The more he got, the more he craved. The money he lent, he always charged him 20%. But he died one day, as all men must, for life is fleeting and man is dust. And the heirs were gay as they laid him away. Now that was the end of Solomon Ray. And his hard-earned gold all went to the lawyers, I am told. Yet men will work and slave, nor carry their treasures beyond the grave. All gold someday will melt away like the selfish savings of Solomon Ray. Now that's a true story. And you figured out that's right too.
How about your self-analysis?
Oh, I don't need to give you
Yes,
that. No.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
I haven't heard this. Come on.
Oh, yes.
Ladies, ladies, what a blessing. You can poo without undressing. Us poor men and sons of witches has to dress or poo our breeches. How does that suit you?
No, that's not the same one.
Oh, that ain't the same one, eh? Well, that's awful, isn't it?
Well, give the other one.
Now that isn't bad.
Give us the other one, though.
Which other one?
You're stalling.
You want
Self-analysis.
You want self-analysis? Now listen, how can I give you self-analysis? Because it don't affect you, nor you, nor anyone but just me.
Yeah, well, listen
That'll
for
be
you.
that'll be my bad story. And I don't want to tell you how bad I really am.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, come on.
I feel very ashamed.
Don't ever be ashamed of anything you've done.
Okay. Stand up and show us self-analysis.
My life is nearly over. My spark of life is out. What used to be my sex appeal is now my water spout. Time was when of its own accord would from my trousers spring. But now I have a full-time job to find the blasted thing. It used to be embarrassing the way it would behave when early in the morning it stood up and watched me shave. But as old age approaches, it sure gave me the blues to see its sad and withered head just watch me shine my shoes. Now that's self-analysis. That's nobody else but just me. Not the rest of them, just me. I'm ashamed to think that, but that's the truth.
He has lots of other points,
What?
you know.
What's the one you can tell the Queen?
Oh, you tell the Queen. Oh, this is, you can tell the Queen. Well, I'll tell you what it is. Two boys, you know, one was about 14, the other was about 18, you know, and the little fellow stuttered. You know, he stuttered badly. And the older fellow said, Johnny, he says, if you would just think about what you're going to say before you start to talk, and get it out slow, not fast like you do. Well, the other fellow said, I just can't do it. He says, and then there's all my life, you know. And I can't help it, he said. And anyway, it's only a peculiarity of my mind. He says, well, what's yours? The other fellow says, I'm not aware to have any. I said, do you stir your tea with your right hand? And he says, of course I do. I said, that's your peculiarity then, from most folks stir it with a teaspoon.
What about that one, a Scotsman? What about the Scotsman?
I'll tell you about a religious fella, a preacher. I got one on a preacher. He had a big congregation in this city. He was a lovely preacher, and he had a big congregation. And him and his wife thought they'd go over and see two of his congregation. They were two old maids. They lived in an apartment not too far from the church. So they went over to the old maids, and they knocked at the door, and the old girl took them in. And as they went by the piano, the preacher had a fit down there, because on the piano, on the top of the piano, was a box about that big around of French safes. And he didn't understand why two old maids would need a box of French safes at all anyway, without putting it on the piano. But after a while, he asked them, ladies, where did you get that little box on the piano? Well, your reverence, I'll tell you where we got it. Last fall, when my sister and I brought our groceries home from town, we found that little box on the street. So we brought it up the house, and we looked and read the direction, and it said, put it on your organ, and it'll keep away disease. But you know, we didn't have an organ, and we just wondered if if it would work on an organ, if it would work on the piano too. So he put it on the piano. And he says, you know, all last winter, neither my sister and I had a cold, not even the sniffles. Now that isn't a bad one.
What about that Scotsman's choice? I can't quite remember it.
Scotchman. Let me see, what about the Scotchman? Oh, the two Scotchmen. And one fellow drove up to the other fellow's place in a beautiful car. Oh, lovely, a lovely car, you know. And when he got there, he got out, and the other fellow said, Mac, he says, where did you get the car? I said, the last time I see you didn't own any kind of a car. And why are you bringing a brand new one up like this? Where'd you get it? Oh, he says, I tell you, I had that give to me. The other fellow said, give to you? Yes, he says, I had that gift. And well, who would give you a car like that? Well, so I'll tell you how it happened. He says, today I was going to hitchhike up to see you. And I just got outside on the road when the young lady pulled up in this car and asked me to get in and have a ride. So I got in the other side beside her, and I rode up with her, and she went up right along till she come to McDuff's Cutoff. She says, yeah, I know. Well, she says she went down McDuff's Cutoff on the right-hand side with a little knoll, parked the car, got out, went over on the knoll, took all the clothes off, and says, take what you like. So I took the car. And he says, you made a perfectly good choice, Mac. He says, the clothes wouldn't have fit you anyway. Well, that wasn't bad. Now, I'll tell you another true story this time. This is a true story. Now, Mr. Thompson, you didn't know him, of course, in Victoria. He was an old fellow. He died at 105. I knew him for many, many years. I knew him when he was about 70, 74, 75. And this is the only story I ever heard Mr. Thompson tell, and it is about himself, nobody else. He said when he was a boy, you know, he was born some place in Ontario, you see, and well, he said, let me see how that goes. He was born in Ontario, yeah.
They were going to the next town to play in the band? Is that the one?
Wait a minute. He was born in Ontario, yeah. And his bunch had a band, you know, a whole bunch of young fellows. And the next town wanted the band to come and play for their sports day. So they thought that was very good, they'd do it. So those days, you know, the road wasn't as smooth as it is now. And the old trucks that they rode in then didn't have pneumatic tires, you know, and there's old rubber tires with rubber wheels on. And they got in and riding along, and the man that drove the bus, he went to work and he'd pick up anybody along till he got his truck full of people, you see. So he got it full, and Mr. Thompson said, oh, you know, the settler was full and he was hanging on. There was a lady right in front of him, the side of him, sitting there, hanging on, and he said, well, you might as well sit on my lap while you know, and you won't have to hang on. So he sits on his lap, you know, and he jiggled along there for a while for a piece, you know, and at last she turned to him, she says, you mind if I'm moving just a little bit? I think I'm sitting right on your flute. His flute came up when he sat on it. Now that's a true story. That's terrible. The yarns, isn't it? Well, I got lots more.
Is this the one poem about the night after Christmas?
The what?
The night after Christmas?
Night after Christmas.
Yeah, you always says you heard about.
Oh yeah, now this is no, you can tell this to anybody. The night after Christmas. It's quite long.
It's okay, we'll take it.
It's the night after Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring excepting a mouse. The stockings were flung in haste over the chair in hope that St. Nicholas would no longer be there. The children were restlessly tossing in bed, for the pie and the candy were heavy as lead. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my gown had made up our minds we would not lie down. When out on the lawn there arose a wee chatter. I sprang from my chair to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter and flung up the sash. And what to my long anxious eyes should appear but a horse and a sleigh, both old-fashioned and queer, with a little old driver, so solemn and slow, I knew in a moment it must be Dr. Brough. As I drew in my head and was turning around, upstairs came the doctor with scarcely a sound. A spoonful of oil, ma'am, if you have it handy. No more nuts, no more raisin, no pies, no candy. These tender young stomachs cannot well digest the sweet that they get. Toys and books are the best. But I know my advice will not find many friends, for the custom of Christmas the other way tends. Fathers and mothers, and Santa Claus too, are exceedingly unwise, so good night to you. And I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, why these feastings and candies makes Dr. Bill bright. That's the night after Christmas.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
Yes.
What?
We said that one.
Oh, I
We
missed
did
it.
that when you missed it.
Do you want to tell us the house that Jack built from the bottom up?
No, it takes too long.
Tell that joke.
Huh?
What's that thing? Thomas, whatever.
What?
The two T's. Two T's.
But Thomas the Tadimus took 2 teas to 2 tight tubs to 2 small trees. How many teas in that?
One, see, how
Don't
many?
tell him.
Say it again for him.
Thomas the Tadimus took 2 teas to 2 tight tubs to 2 small trees. How many teas in that?
12?
No, listen. Thomas the Tadimus took 2 teas to 2 tight tubs to 2 small trees. How many teas in that now? How many do you think?
I think I had 12.
2.
2, no.
Well,
That, T, and
No.
T.
how many teas in that? That's what that is. That's nothing.
Mississippi is a hard word to spell. How do you spell it?
M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I.
Fine already.
Oh,
I-T.
I-T.
What was the
See, I'm
one that
getting
you
old.
remembered? You said you remember one poem. I can't remember which
Well,
one.
I'll tell you something. You know the backpackers? You know the boys with the pack on their back, they're going all over God's green earth? You know what I mean? Well, this young fella came into the town, you know, with his pack on his back, and he found a place to put his pack. And he went uptown, he looked around, and it's a nice little town. He seen a place where you get a bath for 50 cents. He thought, oh, that was fine, you know. He wouldn't have to go down in the cold water down in the creek and take a bath. So he thought he decided he'd take a bath. So he thought, well, if I get a bath, I might as well get a clean shirt and change, you see. So he goes into a general store, and upstairs where the good dry goods was, and the lady was showing him the shirts, you see, how much they were and the different sizes and things. And so she says, I haven't seen you in town before, have I? No, he says, I just come lately. He says, I sound like a foreign accent. Did you come from Southern California? No, he says, I'm Jewish. Oh, he says, she says, this is an old one. He says, well, she says, there's a little Jew in me. Well, he says, I'm very sorry about that, but you can't blame me. I've only been here for a week.
She's got a little Jew in her belly.
You can't blame him because he's only been there a week. That's an old one, you know. That was terrible, old, that one.
I haven't heard that one before.
You got any other ones?
Yeah, I got
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to be worried about whether they're good or bad.
Well,
The bad one?
I'll tell you, there was a woman went into a doctor's office one day, you know, went into her office, and she had one youngster in each hand. 2 little kids went into the doctor's reception room, and there were about 4 or 5 others coming behind her, different kinds and sizes, you know. She went in there, and they all gathered around her mother, and the receptionist come out, you know, with a paper and board to find out who she was, and she found she was Mrs. Johnson, and her address was so-and-so and so-and-so number, and she says to Mrs. Johnson, she says, are all these children yours? Mrs. Johnson says, yes, they are. She says, one every time. She said, I should say not. She says, thousands and thousands of times nothing. We wouldn't have one every time. There's thousands and thousands of times nothing. You see what I mean? That's not bad, is it?
Do you have any bad ones?
Well, I'll tell you, here's a bad one. You want a bad one?
Yep.
I don't think I'd better tell it. The girls are too young.
The ladies aren't too young.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. This hotel was made about 12 feet back from the sidewalk years ago, you know. And the reason that it was built so that the boys could have their beers on their chairs and they come out in the shade of the hotel, you know, and talk and, you know, yarn and talk. And upstairs they made a balcony for the ladies, you know, upstairs, so the ladies would, you know, could come out too. Well, this time the hotel keeper was out there and his wife was upstairs with the ladies. I don't know, I better tell it.
Sure.
You got that for you, might as well finish it.
Well, anyway, he was down there with the boys and his wife was upstairs with the ladies. And there wasn't much sidewalk traffic, but there was one come along once in a while. But this time there was one of these, beautiful pieces of stuff, you know, come along. And when she got out of earshot, you know what he said? He said, I'd like to give her a good 10 inches. And his wife heard him upstairs, you know. She come and she patted the side thing down. She said, George, George, look up here, I want to talk to you. He said, what do you want? He said, I wanted to know where you're going to get the other 5 inches from. Awful, isn't it? That's what I tell you. They're bad stories. It's awful. She knew what was going on. I hadn't better say no more. That's enough.
No.
You gotta have some more.
No.
Something about Victoria or about
Yeah.
Who?
something about went on in Victoria later on when he came back from the war.
When I come back from the war?
He did homesteading and then he left.
Well, after I came back from the war, you see, my father took the farm over.
Yeah.
While I was away. Well, I went back on the farm again.
Yeah.
And he came back here. And I never did get a decent crop after that. It started to get dry.
Yeah.
And it got drier and drier and drier till you couldn't grass grow. You see? So I had to move.
You came back to Victoria then?
Huh?
Then you came back to Victoria?
No. I went down to Calgary. The government, I told, to give us street transportation out. And I took out part of my machinery, and I could only take 4 horses, and part of the machinery, and some of the, I had a good range, and I took the range with me. It was a dandy good range. It was a dandy McClary range, a good one. And I went down to Calgary to give free transportation, and the rest of the horses I had to turn loose. Now, I'll tell you that I hated to do it because I had a pair of 3-year-old colts. You know, they were just broke. Nice big horses, and they were lovely horses, well broke. I had to turn them loose because you couldn't get, no one wanted them. There was no one there. The people had gone. And east of us, a ways, there was a spring. Who in the devil would think it'd be a spring out in that dry and godly country as that? But there was a spring there, and it was a good spring too, but all around it there was plenty of water, you know what I mean? But the country around was dry. Well, I turned the horses loose because I hadn't, because I couldn't take them with me, you know? And I knew they'd have water because there's spring there, and I took what I had and went down to Calgary.
What did you do down there?
Huh?
What did you do down there?
I rented a place from a woman named Mrs. Smith. And I farmed her place there. Then I rented a place from a fellow named Tommy Robertson, so I had both places. And I would work there from 1922 to 1927. And then I sold out and come back here to Victoria.
And then what did you do?
I started to paint. See, my dad used to paint before me. And he had a lot of equipment, and I started to paint. And I painted from then until I was 72 years old.
Where did your family move to? Where were you living?
In Victoria,
Where about?
and
Did they live at Darwin, or did
we had our house there, you know. My house, you see. I had 813 Darwin. I had a house, you see, right near the swamp. You know where my swamp was?
Yeah.
Well, the municipality wanted it, and they traded me another house on Davin Street for that one.
Yeah, that was about 1960.
That was, I forget what year that was.
So you went to Davin?
I was
You
there.
moved on Davin after we moved on to ours, and you've been there 10 years.
I was in Davin there for a while. And then Anne went sick, didn't she? And who burned? No, I'll tell you, Brent.
Yeah.
She had it willed over to Brent. It wasn't mine at all, it was hers. She said, when I was on the other place, she said, I never gave her anything, so when I put that house up on 813 Darwin, I gave her the house. And she could do what she liked with it. Well, that's what she did. She willed it over to Brent. So I was out of the house. Well, I didn't care. I got in the veterans, you see what I mean? I don't need a house, but I don't need money either now, you see? Honest to God, you see, if you you pay $128 a month to live.
What they charge you up there, eh?
Yeah, that's all. And the rest of your pension, they don't touch, you see?
They just take your veterans pension.
They don't take it, no. You cash your check and you pay them cash.
Yeah, but when you moved in there, didn't they cut your veterans pension off?
My veterans pension was cut off, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's been raised all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Until I got now, I don't need the money. There's only $128 I have to pay them, and my pension is $490 some odd dollars a month, just the way it is now.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need it. You see what I mean?
How about when you worked out in Keating?
How do you mean?
What did you do when you worked out that way?
I drove stage from Butler's to Todd Inlet in 1908.
Way back.
That's a long time ago.